we see a meeting that is not embracing science, not embracing consumers or taxpayers, and they're moving ahead with these policies that ultimately harm health and public health. And therein lies the concern is that they're harming public health. They're not helping it.
Hello, this is Christopher Snowdon from the Institute of Economic Affairs. You're listening to the IEA podcast. I'm here in Panama City, where the World Health Organization is holding its, and this is a bit of a tongue twister, the Conference of the Parties 10 conference for the World Health Organization Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. Now, what that really means is that we've got delegates from all over the world have descended upon Panama City in order to talk theoretically about tobacco, but these days very much about e-cigarettes and other reduced risk nicotine products, of which the W.H.O has a fairly low opinion and has been influencing governments around the world, particularly in low and middle income countries, towards their favoured policy of prohibition and failing prohibition to regulate them as thoroughly and as harshly as possible. I'm here not to go to that conference. I'm at a different conference, the Conference of the People, which has been organised by the Taxpayers Protection Alliance, the president of whom is with me today, is David Williams. Hello, David.
Thanks for having me, and welcome to Panama City. It's been quite a week, and to see what the World Health Organization is doing and what they're not doing. I think that's more important, is what they're not doing, and talking about the science behind tobacco harm reduction.
Well, I'm very glad you invited me, and I know you put a huge amount of expense into this. The conference was already cancelled, of course, towards the end of last year, so it's had to be all rearranged. So can you just tell me, David, why you've gone to such lengths to try and put an opposing voice over here in Panama? So
this has been bouncing around in my head for a number of years, because I've looked at the World Health Organization and the amount of taxpayer money that they receive from countries around the world. For example, the United States, we send $400 million in taxpayer money to the World Health Organization. We ask one thing of them: to be honest, to look at the science, and no matter what it is. And listen, the World Health Organization, they do a lot of things around the world, so we want them to use the right science. Now, what we have found is they like to travel. They like to travel a lot. And we found out that each employee spends $20,000 a year on travel. This is just travel for World Health Organization. Now, Doctors Without Borders, they spend about $1,200 a year on travel. Shows you the difference, because when you are funded by taxpayers, it's easier to spend the money than when you're getting contributions from philanthropy and others. So what I did was, I've seen these COPs, these Conference of the Parties, I've seen that they aren't talking about the science, that they kick out the media, they kick out observers and consumers, and I was like, we need to have a voice. We need to have a voice in Panama City. And you're right, we tried to do this in November. About a week and a half before the conference, they canceled it, or they postponed it. They said, well, there's riots, there's protests in Panama City. There weren't. There were a couple of protests, but there was nothing wrong. What had happened was they weren't organized. The World Health Organization wasn't organized. They didn't pay the tab for the convention center, so they had to figure out how to do this. And here we are in February doing this meeting. And listen, the same thing is happening this month that would have happened in November. We see a closed meeting. We see a meeting that is not embracing science, not embracing consumers or taxpayers, and they're moving ahead with these policies that ultimately harm health and public health. And therein lies the concern is that they're harming public health. They're not helping it.
And this is not like a normal United Nations conference, is it? I mean, some people will be familiar, I'm sure, with the COP meetings for climate change. I think COP 28 was the latest one. This is COP 10 for the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. But the COP meetings, they're enormous. They attract people from all over the world. You've got celebrities there, loads of politicians there. You've got lots of NGOs, activists, but also businesses as well. You know, like BP would be there, Exxon would be there. The tobacco meetings are very, very different. I mean, we've been here to sort of try and commentate on it, but there hasn't been much to commentate on. Even the opening session, which is supposed to be live streamed, was not in fact live streamed. Just give us a sense of how secretive and non-transparent this conference is.
Yeah, it's very secretive, and as you mentioned, the live stream just didn't happen, so they really couldn't call it a live stream after that. And during the course of the week, a lot more things were shut down. And if it wasn't for people inside the conference that they were leaking videos, leaking information, we'd have no idea what was going on. To give you an example, the country of St. Kitts and Nevis. This is a country that I'm only familiar with because they're in the qualifying group for the U.S. For the World Cup of Soccer. That's the only reason that I know St. Kitts and Nevis exists. But this week, they stood up and they were talking about tobacco harm reduction. And we got this leaked video, and they were trying to set up a working group and have a discussion. They just want to have a discussion about this, and they got shut down during their comments. And this is really typical of the World Health Organization, is that they only want to hear from voices that they agree with. The people that have been invited inside the conference halls are people they agree with. And in contrast, like you said, COP28, you had fossil fuel companies there, you had activists from both sides of the aisle, you had conservative activists, you had liberal activists, and that's what it's supposed to be, is one big discussion. Whether we agree or disagree with what they come up with ultimately, it's a discussion with everybody. This is a discussion with one person or one set of ideas. It reminds me of the game show Jeopardy, is that you're presented with the answer, then you have to come up with the question. And that's what the World Health Organization is doing when it comes to tobacco control and tobacco harm reduction. And that is a problem because they should be using science. They should be looking, and we have scientists here at our Good Cop, and they've talked about nicotine, that nicotine doesn't pose a threat. So look at the science. That's all we're asking.
And can you just, for most of our listeners, I think will probably be in the UK, we might have some in America, can you explain why Western audiences, say American, British audiences, should really care about this? Because we don't get influenced very much by the WHO. The USA isn't even a signatory of this particular treaty. Why should we be bothered?
First and foremost, the US and the UK fund everything in this world. They're usually the top two funders of every international organization, the United Nations and sub-agencies like the World Health Organization. And we do take our cues from the World Health Organization. Now, we may not be a signatory to this treaty. The United States, the Food and Drug Administration, does listen to what they're doing, and they bring the same policies into the United States. And looking at what's happening in the UK right now when it comes to disposable vapes, I'm concerned that the World Health Organization and the UN are having a voice in what's happening in the UK. So, my country may not be a treaty, and the UK, we know what happened with Brexit and that they're, very appreciative of what they did, but I think they're still listening to these bodies. And a lot of the policies being promulgated in the UK are from the World Health Organization.
Yeah, there's definitely a suspicion that the British government announced all these anti-vaping measures the week before the conference so that delegates from the Department of Health could go along and announce them, as indeed they did, quite proudly, as if to say, the UK is no longer this sort of outlier that's taking tobacco harm reduction seriously. We're now more on side with you, which is very worrying. Just finally, can you just give us an idea of what you've been doing here at the conference, what people have been listening to, who's been speaking, and what they've been saying?
Everybody has been speaking at our conference, taxpayer advocates, policy people, consumers, doctors, scientists, and listen, I know it sounds like a cliche, right? Conference of the people, but we really want it to be that way. We wanted people to have a forum, and we've been here for 5 days, and we've had panels, we've had media come here, because we want people to tell us about their experience. And I want to hear, because I've only met these people virtually. I've only met you virtually. I've only seen you on Twitter, and it's good to meet you and other folks in person, to shake their hands and to see who they are. And hopefully, in the next 2 years, we can make this movement bigger. And wherever the next COP is, Conference of the Parties is, we'll have another Good Cop, and we'll follow these folks around. I mean, we will follow them around the earth until, we can get our message across. And listen, they know we're here, Chris. They absolutely know that we're in Panama City, because they had the Ministry of Health trying to shut us down by saying you can't hand out pamphlets, you can't vape in hotels, and that they would shut down the conferences. We know that, organizations were here, Bloomberg-funded organizations, visited the hotel to see what's going on. Well, guess what? We're live streaming. So there's no secrets here. Everything is open to the public, but we are under their skin officially, and that makes me so happy.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for doing it. Where can people find more stuff on this and look at the various videos listen to the podcast you've been recording this week?
We're at protectingtaxpayers.org and our YouTube channel, which is also Taxpayers Protection Alliance. And I would encourage people to look through our archive and watch some of the panels. And again, this is something that everyone needs to be involved with, because this is going to set policy for the globe.
Thank you very much. And I'm also very pleased to be joined by Dr. Rohan Sequeira. I've not met Dr. Rohan before. He's a tremendous character. He's been speaking on many of the panels. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Have you been enjoying yourself at the conference?
Absolutely. It's been a wonderful place to be.
Can you tell the listeners a bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, I am Dr. Rohan Andrade de Sequeira, half Portuguese, half Indian, and been practicing medicine for more than 25 years. My specialization is cardiology, diabetes, thyroid, and obesity management. But my passion is harm reduction, and that's something I've been passionate about.
And I've just been talking to David about the W.H.O conference and what it means to people in America and Britain. And the WHO does have some influence in these countries, but much more so in places like India. And India has really done what the WHO wants to do around the world. Can you just tell us about what the situation is in India for anybody who wants to use nicotine without smoking?
Right. So right now, if you're in India and basically you have no options other than using tobacco or oral tobacco, which people chew on the whole day, or the other options are snuff and even a paste which they apply on their gums. Mm-hmm. But what's surprising is that there isn't any more place that needs more harm reduction than in India, because we have the world's highest population right now. We just beat China, and we have 268 million tobacco users, whether it's smoking or non-smoking or smokeless tobacco, right? That is more than the population of most of the countries of the world.
Yeah.
So they're dealing with a population, they're practically dealing with an entire country full of tobacco users. Not only that, we have different kinds of tobacco. There are at least 7 or 8 different types of ways in which people can have access to tobacco or related products. You have cigarettes, you have bidis, which is unfiltered tobacco, you have snuff, you have something called maishri, then you have many of these oral chewable tobaccos. And the best part is the worst part is that these oral chewable tobacco is mixed with lime, which is basically what you find in cement. And people use this as a paste to make the tobacco, and then they put it in their tongue, just the way you use snus. They just put it under their lip. This oral tobacco accounts for 90% of the oral cancers in India today. And there's nothing that's being done about it. And that's the real dangerous fact. So if you look at people who want an alternative to quit smoking, quit tobacco and all that, the only choices they have is either chewing gums or nicotine patches, both of which have just a 3% success. That means a 97% failure rate. So they go back to what they do.
So you can't buy snus, you can't buy nicotine pouches, you can't buy e-cigarettes.
No.
And the WHO awarded the Indian Health Minister...
They got the award, yeah.
A special award for banning e-cigarettes.
In fact, I would put it around. They got the award for harming people's lives.
And it's not just that they ban these products, they're also incredibly censorious in terms of what people can even say, trying to oppose government policy.
Not only is it banned, but even research is banned.
Right.
So when you look at research being banned, then there's something really, really serious going on.
And what was generally your take about the conference this year? I was saying to David, we don't know very much about what's been going on because they're so incredibly secretive. I mean, what were you hoping would happen? What do you think is going to eventually happen when it all winds up tomorrow, Saturday?
What I was hoping is already happening. After 10 COPs, this is COP 10, there is news in the media and, what we see, which we read online, that St. Kitts and Nevis has actually tabled the proposal to include harm reduction. Now, after 10 years, it took 10 long years of a gestation period to reach to a point where you understand the need to bring harm reduction in a product that is already causing so many deaths all over the world. 1.2 million people in India are dying every year. So it's not that we're against a particular government or against a particular bureaucrat or an organization. We are defending the human right to choose a better alternative. That's all it is. If I find that there's pollution and I'm fighting for the right to breathe clean air, I shouldn't be criminalized. And they have done the same thing with e-cigarettes, with snuff, with pouches, with snus and all of that thing, right? I have a choice. I need to exercise my human choice. That's guaranteed to me under the Geneva Convention. So I'm just defending that. And I'm sure there are so many people doing that in India right now who are defending their own right to choose a safer product. The WHO can give as many awards as they want to. But at the end of the day, it is the poor man on the street who chooses a product which will either kill him or maim him for life.
And one of the sort of paradoxes about the conference is that they're incredibly sort of defensive and paranoid about tobacco industry involvement. And I think there were 30-odd NGOs applied just to be observers, not to speak, just to observe. They were all turned down. By no means all of them had any connection to the tobacco industry. We know for a fact that quite a few of them had absolutely none. And yet you've got China, India, Japan. These are countries with tobacco monopolies. India is a complete state-run monopoly. Same with China. JTI is still the government has a significant stake in that. How much of that do you think affects the policy, particularly in India? I mean, is this a straightforward case of follow the money? They want people to keep on buying their products, or is that too cynical?
One of the things of the Empower was to increase taxes on cigarettes, right? And right now, India has got one of the highest rates of taxes on cigarettes. We have 56% taxation on cigarettes and tobacco-based products. I think if you look at the statistics, about more than $2 or $3 billion per year come only from taxation on tobacco or cigarette products. The other products are even more. Interestingly, 80% of the cigarettes that are sold in India are manufactured by ITC, and
Indian Tobacco Company,
which basically 30% of it or thereabouts is owned by the Indian government. So it's a direct stakeholder, right? Mm-hmm. So you either direct or indirect, they are a stakeholder. The remaining is all by other companies, 2 or 3 different companies. Right. Philip Morris and you have VFC, which has the other 1% or the other 19%. Last year, 81 billion cigarettes were sold in India. Now, that's a huge tax. Mm-hmm. And that is a huge amount of money. And it's like, it shouldn't be a case of follow the money, but it should be follow the health. So that is something which leaves a lot of space for work to be done in that area.
Tell us a bit about Panama City. I mean, this is my first time here. We've been going out and about. I get the impression that W.H.O picked Panama because it has a total ban on e-cigarettes, not just the sale of them, but the use of them. You can't bring them in. Everybody at this conference is a bit nervous about bringing their devices in because they got seized. You can't seem to smoke anywhere, indoor or outdoor, so apart from maybe the middle of the road. And yet I'm told that about 90% of the market for tobacco is illicit. People are routinely flouting the bans on smoking and to a lesser extent vaping. I mean, what's your sense of Panama as a sort of model for what the WHO wants to do? Do you think it's a success or not?
It's like, let me give you an example. It's like trying to ban the use of water and holding a conference in the middle of the desert, right? You're somehow going to find a need to survive, right? You're going to find water wherever you are. And just like all of the other place, I know it's a stupid example, but, if you have a conference in the middle of the desert, you have to drink water, right? At least, maybe the example may be too extreme, but what I saw is that there is no country in the world, and I travel very extensively. I probably visit a country every 2 months. I have yet to see a country where they have been able to effectively ban the product and not allow underground sales. I was taking a walk in Panama City last night, and it was about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. I saw electronic cigarettes being sold on the roads. People were having bags and suitcases. They were standing on the roads. They were selling cigarettes. I saw an advertisement while I was coming from the airport that that advertisement on the highway said that 95% of cigarettes sold in Panama are counterfeit. And that was by the Department of Customs.
Oh, I wondered where that statistic came from. They're advertising it on the street.
Exactly. They're admitting to their own fallacies. I mean, there's a 95% counterfeit cigarettes in the country, and below was like the Customs Department of Panama. I was like, okay, it takes.
What I don't get. What's the purpose of the advertisement?
I have no idea, but they did it, and it's there, so I got to see it.
I've yet to see any cigarettes in shops. The only people selling tobacco products are just like kids on the streets, or old men with boxes of
That's another
cigars.
Dangerous part. We talk about youth vaping. We have kids selling tobacco.
Single cigarettes?
Yeah, cigarettes. Young guys. I had a 10-year-old. He looked like he was 10. He came and approached me and saying, cigarette. And then I said, no. And then he said, vape. And he actually took out a vape from he took out a vape from his pocket. It was about 10 or 11.
We've seen adverts for vapes as well, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. Pamphlets.
That's really bizarre. The product is very, very illegal, and yet there seems to be legitimate adverts for e-cigarettes.
You know what the risk factor here is, Chris, is that when you do this, when you have this kind of a scenario, you are actually bringing harmful products. because unregulated vapes, you have unregulated mods, you have liquids which you do not know where they came from, whether they came from China or some sweatshop. We have no idea. There is no there is no accountability for any of these products that came in. So you could be having harmful products.
Yeah. Something for Rishi Sunak to think about as he tries to ban 87% of the e-cigarette market, which is what disposables make up in Britain. Rohan, it's been great meeting you this week. Have a safe flight back. Thank you very much. And thank you for listening. Follow us on YouTube. Visit our website, iea.org.uk. If you can afford it, give us a donation. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.